Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where we talk about growth, systems, and what actually works and what goes wrong. I'm your host, Paul Guyan, and I don't think most business owners really know this, but many, they think the trouble shows up when sales slow down. But sometimes the most dangerous thing, we were just talking about it, is when revenue is growing, customers are coming in, the team is busier than ever, and everything looks healthy, but until it doesn't. So today's conversation is about what happens when growth starts hiding the very problems that eventually break a business. Maybe. Aloysius, my brother, it's a great name. It's a German saint that had some prolific victories, I think, in Germany. I don't know the background to that, but we'll get to that in a minute. But take us back to when revenue was growing, the business looked healthy, and what happened that first made you think something wasn't right?
Thank you, Paul, for that introduction and setup. So it was a consulting company. I was one of three founders. It took us a while. We found our formula, felt we hit our pace, and then we took our eye off of the small things that build a business. So we watched revenue, we watched lead generation. I had one of our partners actually took a step back. Was on a different assignment. We had one of the partners be the primary operating force of the company, and everything looked great. And we were building revenue, we're adding employees, lead generation's still there. Our consultants are traveling, busier than ever. And all of a sudden, one month we get hit with a $30,000 loss. Now that's pretty significant for a $3 million revenue company. This was
Ooh,
back about 20 years ago.
what did that feel like?
Oh, the first one was a slap. We take notice. So we get with the partner operating the company, and he says, everything's great, shows us the basic metrics, and it all looks good. It says, just a small little blip, no big deal.
Yeah.
So we calm down, and next thing you know, a $50,000 loss.
Wow.
And I'm like, now we're like, what is going on? And him and the sales manager we had at the time were clueless. They couldn't explain it. Because of that, I got really active. I said, look, I've always been this data guy and always dig beneath the surface. So it was pretty obvious something was really going wrong. And what happened is we were managing the company by the high level metrics and not anything around quality. So our lead generation was great. Our consultants were making the calls and doing the consulting, but we weren't closing to enough of percentage to make up for the cost that we were incurring. And that's where the losses were coming from. So revenue was up, but our costs were up even more. And that's what ate up all of the margins and led to the losses. So we dug into it and found that what it was is everybody got siloed. Our lead generation said we're generating enough leads. Our consultants were saying we're making all of our calls, and billing and receivable, we're collecting what gets billed, but nobody was ultimately felt responsible for the end result, which was a profitable company and profit margins. And so that was the first
Yeah.
thing we had to change was lead generation has to have tied to quality. And if we're not billing a certain percentage of them, then you're not meeting the need, and had to redefine what success looked like. We got totally away from measuring the small little pieces that build up into great big things. That's what
So you've got
ultimately
the
happened.
yeah, you've got these silos,
Right.
and what were they surprised? What were they telling each other? Were they going like this?
They exactly right. So the lead generation team was saying we're producing enough leads, they're not billing enough. The consulting team was saying we're billing the ones that are billable, we're getting a lot of garbage, but they hadn't talked before then until things blew up. We had allowed them to go on their own little path. And that was the big thing. And that's the lesson of that is everyone has to be accountable to the end goal, and everybody has to understand what the end goal is. And everyone has to continually communicate. And they became separate functions. It was really quite startling how fast that happened. Happened over a period of only a few months.
What did you was there 3 consecutive months, or what happened? What were the first attempted fixes, first of all?
The first attempt at fixes was done by the initial team that was running the business, and they just doubled down. They told the lead generation, we need you to produce more leads, not better leads, more leads. They
Yeah.
told the consulting division, we want you to go out and make more calls and focus on billing, but there wasn't any harmony there. There wasn't any, what was wrong with the quality? That just got totally overlooked. That's when I came in after the second big loss. And we had a third month that we lost 50,000. So it was like after the 3 months, we were down 130,000. And like I said, if a couple more months would have went by, I was going to make a serious decision not to put any more of my money into the business, because at that point, we were starting to sink a lot of our own money back into the company, the three founders. And it was startling, the conversation I had with our lead generation and our consulting teams, because I'm a transparent kind of person. And I always felt like, even if it's a small company, the people who work there deserve to know some fundamental elements and truth about the business.
Yeah.
So I brought them in and we talked about the position of the company, and I instituted a bunch of changes, and people don't like change. So
No.
that's the first thing. And so I let them know where we were sitting. I said, we are losing significant amount of money. I said, right now I could take my $10,000 and put it in the bank, and I'd be better off than invested in this company right now by how we're operating. And everyone goes, what do you mean? We got to be making money. Look at the revenue. I couldn't believe I was
Yeah.
having to talk to college educated people like this, right? And I told them, I'm like, that's part of the formula for a profit. What's the second part? And that's when we got into the cost and quality and how percentages have to ride through everything.
What was driving up the cost? The cost of lead generation or fulfillment?
Both, right? Because our consulting is database information consulting, and this automated decision matrix is what we were consulting on. This was early on before we got real sophisticated with decision making with AI, but we were
Yeah.
automating a lot of credit and financial decisions to making more efficient and more programmable for companies. Saved
Mhm.
them a ton of money in their costs, but also saved them a lot in their write-offs, because we took the human element out and took emotion out of it and made it cold hard logic. So that took a lot of work, right? So a lot of hands-on, and you're asking companies to change some real fundamental processes. So it's a heavy hands-on. So
Uh,
it's personal face time, a lot of discovery and research and reporting, and all that's done in person. Everyone was traveling out of Cincinnati and flying around the country. And so the costs were significant in attempting to work with businesses in that industry.
yeah. So you had to throw more people at it.
We were throwing more people. We had hired a lot of people to cover them. But again, what happened is billings dropped, percentages of customers consulted and billed dropped. So we're
Why did they
chasing
drop?
more business and getting less and driving revenue up, but spending a lot more money to get it.
Why were they dropping off? Why was the billing dropping off?
Lack of quality and setup. So certain
Oh,
conditions need to be met to have someone ready. And what happened is, and then secondly, if that handoff doesn't happen, you start dropping people too. So
okay.
like, let's follow it through. So I set up and get an initial client that's interested in saving money, but I don't explain to them the depth and breadth of the work. When my consultant shows up and starts digging in that, they're like, what are you doing? Nobody said you had to do this kind of lengths and you were going to redesign our decision processes and things. If the company's not set up to understand and expect that, it creates a lot of rework in the best cases. In the worst cases, we just lost a lot of business right there.
Ah,
Yeah.
so you decreased the leads, value of the leads decreased. They weren't qualified.
Yep.
They needed to be educated
Better
and
setup.
before or disqualified,
Right.
probably disqualified or put into a nurture sequence of some sort. And then your people, what were they not trained in the onboarding process, or they were expecting the client to be prepped and ready to go and
What I
onboard
found
ready?
in business, yeah, what I found in business, and I'm sure you've seen the same thing, and the people out there will, you get to a place of comfort. And to me, this is a very dangerous place,
Yeah.
because when you get to a place of comfort, then you start making the assumptions that the quality is maintained in a lot of cases. And what happened is, when you take your eye off of that and you're not constantly pushing, you get drift. You mentioned drift earlier. So you get drift in some of the small things. So the lead generation team was generating leads, but they weren't generating leads that were set up properly, waiting for the next step of the process in the
Yeah.
handoff. So they were just getting dumped on our consultants, and our consultants had a limited amount of time. They couldn't engage in doing a selling process and do their job. And so the whole thing just got choked off right there. It was really simple human nature, getting too comfortable, taking your eye off some of the basic fundamental things, and drift enters. And drift can be extremely dangerous. Starts out small until all of a sudden it dead piles on you, and then there's an avalanche, and then you're under it.
And the thing, you're right, it happens small, it's incremental, it's hardly noticeable until it overtakes you, and then you've got to backpedal. You
Right.
mentioned quality. Is the quality you're talking about the onboarding process, the onboarding of the clients and them not getting
Yes.
ready? Was it the
Right.
lead quality, or was it the fulfillment?
So there was some issues with consulting because we added a lot of new people. And again, our training wasn't as robust as it should have been. But I
Uh,
always like to start at the beginning. So the most critical thing was the lead quality. And how I would define lead quality in this is an informed and educated customer or potential customer that understands the process, understands the value, understands the work that's required to achieve it, and is willing to take on that work. And that was where the real big loss was.
Sometimes you need to make it easy for the customer to come on board with you. If
Sure.
they have to lift a lot, you have to do a lot for them or have a way that they can come on easily. Uh, so yeah, I can see how that would make. So you've talked to lead gen, you've talked to the consulting. There was really the billing part. Their responsibility was probably to support some of the rising costs of delivery. Uh, when was that noticed? How did they notice that?
So what happened is the thing billings were going up, right? Revenue was up, billings were
Yeah.
up, right? So that part looked good. It's all the costs and how we lost all efficiency on delivering it.
Oh, and
And so
they didn't see that, did they?
no. As long as people would pay that were billed, they were fine. And so they didn't alert to anything.
Ah.
Right.
And so who was watching that part of the
The profit part was supposed to be my one partner. And like I said, things were getting a little shaky, but we were still making money until that first loss. That's the interesting thing. It
yeah.
wasn't this long, slow, winding tail down, right? It's like we had a few months where we started you could see a little bit of a decline, and all of a sudden, bam, it showed up. It was
Yeah.
really interesting how dramatic it was. I think at that time we had 33 or 34 employees in a consulting business. It's pretty sizable unless you're one of the big consulting houses, right? We were very specialized in what we
So
did.
what did how did he react to this news? And was he trying to blame other people, or was he what did he do? Or what did he or she do?
He was stumped.
Oh,
What Just didn't understand what happened. And so, like I said, what he did is he went back and they actually did a bonus for additional lead generation out of the lead team, did a bonus for the consulting side. And so that was his way of fixing it, thinking this is just a minor little thing. And again, the
work
first
harder.
month, I was okay with that. I could understand how, okay, maybe you think that, right? The second month, when he was like, I don't know where to go next, that's when I said, okay, I'm stepping in.
Yeah.
And then we dug in and I started looking at all the fundamental stuff. We generated 100 leads. What percentage did we used to bill? What was our average per lead revenue? And I started
Mhm.
looking at all those foundational things, which showed where the ugliness sat. If you didn't dig down into some of that data, you would have never gotten I think, to the point of what was really driving it.
So was this gentleman, was he surprised by that? Did he dig in with you? How did that work?
No, he didn't dig in with me. By that time, I was just very frustrated with him because I would start asking questions and he didn't have any of the answers. And I thought, oh my God, if I was running this, I would have done all this work already. So I went and dug in myself. And that's when I came back and I said, okay, I have some hard suggestions on how to fix this. The three of us in the room, and he said, yes, what are they? And I said, the first one is you're out.
Oh.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. I said, you're no longer running this. And I said, I think I need to be. And then I had the feeling that he was trying to be too much of their friend and didn't want to be the bad news person in the midst of all this. And I said, I'm sorry. I think we're at a spot now where we can't worry about politics too much. I said, we're going to have to make some abrupt changes. And we did. I restructured the whole lead generation component of the business. I insisted on our consultants to go through another round of training. And then we instituted quality controls on both sides where it would ensure that we never drifted too much. It just became a
Yeah.
regular part of the process.
So he left the company, or did he just get a different role?
Different assignment,
Yeah.
completely different assignment. Yes.
Different
We had
assignment.
another business. And so we put him over there.
Yeah. And so how did you feel through all this? You were out doing something else, researching St. Aloysius in Germany. What what was it like for you? How did
Well,
that affect you?
first of all, I was shocked by a number of things.
Oh,
So I couldn't blame anybody else because I did the same thing. I got comfortable. It took
yeah.
my eye off of the fundamentals. And this is my first business that I helped found. I went on to do 8 more after this, but this was my first one. And so I was shocked at how quickly we got so comfortable and we left it. So I couldn't get mad at anybody else without getting mad at myself. And I was upset with myself. So that was the first thing. The second thing is I was surprised how it avalanched. I would have thought there would have been more early warning signals and we would have seen more of a decline. And it was like we got a little bit and we just fell off the cliff. I've later come to appreciate that's exactly how it happens, right? You don't get this
Yeah.
long wind. You get a couple little blips and then it'll just go along and all of something like that. I think we see that with the stock market and a lot of other things. That's probably my first real feel and test of systems. So your show's about systems.
Yeah.
And when there's a systemic problem, that's usually what happens, right? So that was the other thing that surprised and shocked me.
Yeah. Now, did this have a personal or physical or emotional toll on you with your family, with the
Well,
travel?
absolutely. All the way around, right? At that time, I was recently married. My
Oh,
wife was expecting her first. And
oh,
so, yeah, it was a bit pressure packed. And it was real pressure on me too, because we put a lot into this, thought we had a successful business going, and then it looked like we might lose it. And I got to tell you, you go home and you look at yourself in the mirror and say, what are you doing? How could this happen? And is it savable? Because that's the other thing. I did all that research. I think it's the quality. I think we can fix it. It's the first time I ever was really deep into something like that. And so you're always questioning yourself, am I up to the task?
yeah. And so you were also making some assumptions about the business. You were confident, like you said, things were going right. What was it that broke?
I'm sorry, what was it?
What assumption broke? Adding
Well,
more people, doing the bonuses.
the assumption that broke was that when people find something and have a formula for success, that they'll continue it unabated without
Uh,
reminders, guardrails, and controls. That's the
okay.
assumption that broke, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's the assumption we all made. Our people know it's successful. They know how we get to this. We'll just keep doing our job. Right? That's a bad assumption, as
Yeah.
most of them are, right?
So back to your wife. Did she have another Aloysius?
No, she wouldn't
No.
let me. We did eventually have a son. She wouldn't let me name him Aloysius. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad. But how was she reacting through this? Was she supportive, or was she was probably overwhelmed a little bit because you weren't there to help her, right?
Supportive and stressed
Yeah.
because I'm coming home stressed. She's worried about the livelihood for our family and what this is going to do to our family.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very stressed. And she's pregnant at the same time. So I would say her stress level was higher than mine.
Yeah, because of the hormones and just all that they have to worry about,
You know,
bringing up a kid and all of that.
well,
So,
the good part is 5 months after I took over, we were more profitable than we were before. And the company was running very well. And we had institutionalized some system checks into it to make sure that never happened again. But the cost to me was I wanted nothing to do with it anymore. Both my partners wanted me to continue running it. And I told them, I said, for me to do that, I need to take 2 months off and just go away because I was traveling a lot. to prove that my assumptions were right, I was taking over some of the consulting work and insisting on doing that. I actually even did some lead generation. I went and immersed myself in both of those teams at different times to learn as much as I could to make sure that I was right, and also prove or disprove some of the conclusions I had drawn. So rather than just think that I had it settled and was right, I went and dug in and actually did it myself.
So
Um,
yeah, you mentioned people don't like change. So how did the lead gen team respond to you getting into their
oh,
territory?
oh, they did not like it at all. They kept trying to tell me how I didn't know their job and that I didn't realize how hard they worked. And so that's a big mistake to tell a guy like that. So I went and sat down and had a desk right in there with them and was making calls with them and listened. And then I watched what they did. And after a week, I told them, I'm like, okay, here's my conclusion. You people waste a lot of time, which they did. And I said, here's my next several conclusions. I said, and I openly debate anybody on this being incorrect. And so that's how we went about change. I said, now this is what we're going to do. So,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
how do they respond to that?
they didn't like it, but I told them this was the position. We needed to do this to bring the business back and make it a more longevity play for everyone, including them. Or if we continued along, I thought we had 3 more months, we were going to close it down.
And you shared with them where the company was. You were
Right.
transparent with them.
Yeah, my
Uh,
business partners didn't like that, by the way. They thought that was a mistake. And I told them, I said, I'm sorry. They're investing their lives and their families in our business, just like we are. I think they have the right to
oh,
know certain fundamental elements of our business, and I shared it with them. So I showed them how much money we were losing. I showed them how much money we were making before all the problems started, right? I shared all that. And like I said, a couple of my partners weren't crazy about that, but I told them, like, I'm sorry, they're in this with us. If I want them to embrace these changes and keep their jobs with us because we need them, I need to show them that we really are in this together.
what were those conversations like with the other partners?
They weren't happy at first, but had already done it and told them, you don't know how to fix this. I think I do. This is part of my solution. So if you don't agree, then you come in and do it, and I'm out. And so you take the guy who's willing to steer the ship as it's taking on water, or you do it. And the beautiful part about that is after we righted the ship and got it all working again, then we instituted a profit sharing component of the business with all of our employees, which I was extremely proud of. Most companies that size don't have anything like that, right?
Yeah,
Um,
true.
it-
Very true.
and we
Especially a
instituted
generous,
that.
generous one.
Yeah. And we
No.
instituted that. And because that's the other thing I didn't realize. A lot of people that work for small companies don't, back in those days, didn't have understanding about revenue sharing or profit participation or 401ks. And we instituted all that for our employees. And part of that was when I started sharing, because my partners, when we start making good money again, aren't they going to want a cut of it? And I go, yeah, probably they will be. And I go, that might be the right thing to do. I said, I'm asking them for big sacrifices now. I think this is kind of the payoff. I think there should be a little bit of a payoff for them. And of course, we instituted that we earned it with time, so it wasn't like a pure gift. But I felt like they stick with us and go through this ugliness with us. I think they deserve to share some of the rewards.
Yeah. When your business, I believe anyway, when your business serves the common good,
Yeah,
which includes yourself, your clients, and your employees and your vendors, suppliers, as long as you do that, obviously you got to watch the fundamentals, but you should be oriented, the business should be oriented in that way, I believe, because
right,
you'd be a lot more successful and more gratified with the results. Because once your team is gratified, they're going to take care of their customers and their vendors and the relationships that are being built over time. If you don't do that, then it's just a job.
right. Sometimes worse than just a job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In sales and lead generation are not what I would call easy tasks, right?
No, no.
And no, it was the right thing to do. And it was we never looked back and we never had where we took our eye off the fundamentals again. And the tech companies now in its 35th or 36th year, I sold out of it, but it's in its 35th or 36th year now. So we weathered the storm and I think we learned the lesson.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about you said you went on the consulting calls,
Mhm.
the sales calls.
Sure.
Uh, how did how did that team react to it? Because we didn't talk about that. I assume it's similar, but
They really had more of an axe to grind than a problem, right? Because our newer people weren't billing as much, but we didn't give them nearly the depth of training that we did our more substantial people who we allowed to learn by time in trial by fire a little bit. So our
Mhm.
newer people got shortchanged. So I really didn't think that there was a ton of fault there. It was real more that we didn't set them up for success like they should have been. And then we started beating them on them for consulting dollars. That's my takeaway from working with them. I really did see the major problem as the quality of the lead generation, and then the lack of quality of training and support, particularly with our newer consultants.
Why do you think that you didn't see this sooner? You said it just happened all of a sudden. So, were there other indicators that you noticed in looking back?
If I had to go back, if we were looking at the percentages on the efficiencies, we would have seen it sooner, right? So for every 100 leads generated, we're billing 60%. We would have seen that slide, right? But like I said, the team wasn't monitoring those percentages. They were monitoring the high level overall numbers. This is another reason why I take shots at a lot of dashboard management talks, right? Manage the big numbers and everything else will work out. Our team was managing the big numbers.
As it turns out, that's not true.
It didn't work out, right? And so if we, in retrospect, if we would have been looking at some of those deeper things, yeah, the signals were there, absolutely. But it was amazing how it just kind of snowballed really quickly. Still to this day, I think it's a little shocking.
And why do you think the leaders thought that the dollar growth meant that you had a healthy company?
Because that's a simple number. What's everybody talk about? Revenue growth, right? So we're growing our revenue. A lot of, not just small companies, a lot of big companies make that mistake, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't until I gotten a little more seasoned and I worked for a billionaire at a software company where I started a new division to where I saw just how dedicated it was. He thought that all these big business in these big companies had it all wrong, not growth for growth's sake. Growth had to be profitable or he wasn't interested in it.
Uh,
And I had the same position from a totally different angle and aspect after this and a couple other instances I experienced and watched. But I've seen it everywhere. In the automotive aftermarket parts industry, I had an e-commerce company, and a few of our competitors, their pricing was insane. And I looked at all the numbers, and I knew there's no way they could be making money, and they weren't. But they kept thinking, "We'll catch up with all this revenue generation. We'll catch up." No, if the percentages of margin don't work out, you never catch up, and they didn't. They wound up owing every major supplier millions of dollars in the industry, and eventually it impacted the whole industry when they went. So,
yeah. Wow. So you fell off a cliff
all right,
and you came in and after a lot of pain and suffering between you and your wife and your soon to be
employees.
and your employees and your partners,
Yep.
you were able to turn it around. And basically what you did is you installed fundamental business practices.
In systems, right? Absolutely. And
And
automate it as much of that as possible. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for
Mhm.
saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So any business can do this. Any business who's faced with growth or wants to grow should probably do those things from the get-go instead of doing it by the seat of the pants. Wouldn't you say? Wouldn't that be a good realization or a good starting point for a business?
Absolutely. But what happens is, and you and I both know this, what happens is when you start a business, you're learning a lot of new things
Yeah.
and your feet are to the fire and the wolf's at the door. So a lot of times you just do stuff just to get past the next couple of days and take care of the immediate minute, right?
Right.
And that's why I advocate to people, as soon as you get to a spot where you feel semi comfortable, that's when you should stop and go back and look at all the systems you have and then reassess them and rebuild them with intentionality because we didn't do that.
Uh,
And that's the
yeah.
lesson. Mhm.
Otherwise, you'll be paying for ends of the Otherwise, you're paying for sins of the past,
Well,
right?
I don't want to call them sins, but let's just say band-aids.
Yeah,
Because
that's true.
in the
Yeah.
moment they feel right. In the moment they feel like it's the right thing to do. And a lot of times they probably are, but is that the way
And
you
you,
want to operate forever?
yeah, whenever you say, I'll come back to that, that's something you should write down and come back to it.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
so these lessons still apply today, 36 years later.
Oh yeah.
What other scaling traps do you think leaders continue to repeat?
We talked about some of the issues with growth, and one of the biggest problems our business faces and challenges with growth is the founder themselves. This is the hard lesson. And I'm sorry, everybody I know has had their own business, I think, has gone through this, and they either learn or they don't learn, right? And they fight it. You eventually become the problem. Now, what do I mean by that? As a founder, when you get started, you have to do everything. Your hand is involved in everything. You're involved in every decision, every impact, every outcome. And you get this belief that's the way it needs to be. But here's the thing, you're only one person, and only one person can only be in so many places. And you also mentioned if you want to grow. I actually started writing an article, I haven't finished it yet, on how every business doesn't have an option, but they have to grow because of inflation, competitive risk, and everything else. You absolutely have no choice as a business. You have to grow or you'll die eventually. Be slow death maybe sometimes, but you're going to go out of business. And so you have to grow. So knowing that, you have to fundamentally understand you can't be all answers. And so every business I've seen gets to a point where you got to let it loose. You got to trust other people. Now, you want to be really smart about who you trust. And I saw one of your other podcasts, you talked about how somebody helps you early in early days, but the
Yeah,
position of need grows beyond them. That's
yeah,
absolutely true. I'd say that's probably the second biggest mistake of most founders. The first one is with themselves and not letting things loose. The second thing is understanding the difference between loyalty and what the business needs. And so you get to a certain point, you have to let it loose. Now, thankfully, I learned this earlier in my career as a sales manager. I took over an office that was struggling. And after 6 months, I instituted a bunch of rules and went over control and righted it, but realized after 8 months that was not sustainable and wouldn't last, and that I was the problem, in that
yeah,
I'd gone too far. And then I started giving people small tests, and if they prove themselves right, I just open it up more and more. But that's what every founder has to get to a spot where they have to do. You have to have somebody you trust. You have to trust them. Don't give them a mile, give them guardrails, but you got to let decisions go and let other people make them. Because eventually, what will happen, everything has to come to you. You'll be the thing that slows it down. You'll be the reason why you couldn't take the opportunity because you weren't available and they couldn't make the deal. You got to let people have some freedom, autonomy, and authority. But then you need to make them own it too, right? So it's double-edged sword.
own it and be accountable. You got to hold them
Yeah,
accountable to it and tell them where you're going, how you plan to get there, and how they fit.
right.
Yeah,
Show them their story. Absolutely.
yeah,
You.
yeah. It's been an interesting story. I can tell that you've lived it. You lived it as a salesperson, you lived it as a business owner, and now you're giving back to the community. So how do people get in touch with you, Aloysius?
So the easiest way is to go on LinkedIn and search for Aloysius. That's Aloysius Carl. I'm the only one on there. And just communicate through that. And that's the best way to get in touch with me. And what I would say, if people ask me, Al, why should someone come to you for advice? Because first of all, co-founded 9 companies, led transformation at Procter and Gamble, led change initiatives at Procter and Gamble. So I've seen this kind of thing throughout every kind of system, multiple industries. I've experienced a lot. And
Yeah,
the other thing is, the most important thing to me is facts, reality of the real world, and truth. That I won't sugarcoat it. I won't tell you things in a certain way because I hope you'll hire me longer or give me a bigger contract. I just tell you exactly how I see it and why, and then let you know the things I think you can do to fix it. And so if you want unvarnished, realistic advice, I think I'm a good source.
Awesome. Great. So be sure you connect with him on LinkedIn, Aloysius Carl, Aloysius Carl. He's the only one there. He'll be easy to find. One of the biggest lessons from today, I think, the conversation we've had today, as we started out, growth doesn't automatically mean the business is healthy. Sometimes growth is the thing that's exposing a weakness that's already there, and all you have to do is look at the fundamentals. So as we sign off, remember, faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal to the metal. Until next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyan and Aloysius Carl. Thank you, my brother. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyan, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.